Our lesson today is on international trade. As you know, international trade is the learning outcome number 3. And the subtopic there is principles governing trade. Okay? Now, when we look at this section and we think about it, you don't have to go far. Think about your everyday life. What you need, what you want in an everyday life. Like, for instance, you all have cell phones, huh? Yes. You have clothes that you wear. Okay? At home, you watch TV. There's a fridge, microwave. Okay? There's a microwave, there's an oven, there's a kettle, iron. There are many things that we need and want on an everyday basis. You need food. You are all eating, we want food, and some things are essential, some are luxurious, some are just nice to have, but they are our wants. We cannot just do away with, we are used to them. Now, those things need to be bought. When you want a clothing item, you go to the shop and you buy. Okay? Or the intercom called you. All right. Okay? When we want a clothing item, you go to the shop and you buy. When you want food, you go to a shop again and you buy. Just today, you came to school with transport, and you would have paid the taxi or the taxi driver or the bus driver or the train. You would have paid for that particular service. So it all starts with whatever we need and we want. Okay, whatever is our needs, it starts there, and after that, the need of getting it, because when you buy, you trade. When you buy that lollipop in the tuck shop, that is trade. You are getting the lollipop in exchange of money. And it's an exchange. It is trade. When you are paying a bus service, it's a service that is provided to you, and in doing so, we are trading. So tell me today, how many of you have traded? What have you done today? How have you traded today? Okay, you can raise your voice. You bought a snowball. Okay, who else was involved in trade today? Yes. You bought 2 pretzels. Okay, what else? Who else has been involved in trade? Yes. I bought a Russian roll. You bought a Russian roll today. Okay, who else? The rest of us, we don't trade. What did you do today? Yes. You paid the taxi driver to school. Okay. What else? Yes. So someone sold their mover tickets. That's a bus fare. All right. Look at you. Every day we are trading. So you are basically my young traders. Okay. So trade is something that is happening on an ongoing basis, and it will always happen. So long as we have wants and there are things we need, we will always trade. Now, the issue comes when now what you want is at a very far place, if I may put it that way. Okay, it's unlike I walk to the shop and I buy. Now, all of a sudden, there is distance that is a factor. Okay, like, you know, there's this particular brand that you want, and it's very far from your area. So you have to go to a particular shopping center or a particular province or a particular country. Then the issue of distance now comes into place to say, how best are we getting that one item that you need? Okay, now we have options. Okay, we have different ways in which you can get it. Like, for instance, take Johannesburg and Durban. How best can you get something? How best can you get to Johannesburg as efficiently and as economical as possible? If it was you, Jay, you want to buy that 1 pair of sneakers. How best can you get there? Johannesburg. Think Johannesburg. What are the options that you have? Oh, shop online. Okay. You can take a bus. You can fly. Okay? Are those the only options that are available? What else? Yes? You can take a train. Okay? So in doing so, in wearing or looking at these options, the issue of urgency comes into place as well, isn't it? How soon do you want it? Do you want it now? Can you live with it for another day? Can you live without it for another day? Or if I can just get it this week? Okay? Also, the cost factor. How much is it if I fly as opposed to driving, as opposed to getting into the bus and so forth? But there are options available. Okay? And it's a matter of weighing your options. All right. Here's another example. Say 2 of you have to go to Johannesburg. Okay? It's now 2 of you, you must attend a particular event or function. You have options. You have a car, you have a taxi, you have a bus, you have a train, and you have an aeroplane. Which is the best method of getting to Johannesburg for the 2 of you? Just the 2 of you, yes. A car. Why is a car a better option than a taxi? It will be much smaller and cheaper, isn't it? But if it's 15 of you, still you have a car, you have a taxi, a bus, and a train. Which is the better option? A taxi is a better option. Why not use 5 cars? Because you can still use a car. You can still use a car, isn't it? But now, why choose 1 taxi over 5 cars? Okay, you can raise your hand. Yes.
A taxi can accommodate 15 people, while 5 cars can actually cost more if you were to refill petrol.
So it's a matter of cost. We have a visitor. It's a matter of cost. Okay? It's a matter of, it's a cost factor. Okay? You are checking how much does it cost transporting 15 people with 1 taxi as opposed to 5 cars. 15 people in 5 cars, isn't it? So obviously it will be expensive to use the cars. You might as well use the taxi. And if it's 30 people, what would you do? Or 15? You take a bus, isn't it? And if it's 200 people, you might consider bigger methods of moving, isn't it? The same will apply when we are transporting goods. First, it's the distance that is being covered. Okay? Number 2, it's the volume that we are transporting. Which one would be economical looking at the same distance but now in different volumes? All right. Because I can tell you this much. In our example to Johannesburg, the transportation cost from Durban to Johannesburg might be more or less the same. Okay? It's still the same distance, but if 2 people were to take a taxi, how will that impact on these 2 people? Would that be cheaper or expensive now? If it's 2 people on 1 taxi? Expensive? Yes. What do you think would make that expensive? Out of curiosity, why? Because it's the same routes, it's the same costs, but now why is it more expensive for 2 people? Yes? They have to book the whole taxi. And the value of these modes of transport on its own is not the same. Also, there are some costs that will be added on a much bigger mode as opposed to a smaller transport mode. So these 2 people that are in the taxi will have to cover all the costs by themselves. Where if it was 15 people, all 15 will have to divide the cost amongst themselves, making it cheaper per person. The same with the bus, the same with the the train, and so forth. So it is important to look into those things when we are dealing with the issue of transport and trade. There is this concept that we use of economies of scale. What is economies of scale? It is looking at the best method of transporting goods over a certain distance and considering volume. The bigger the volume, the bigger the mode of transport that is required. The smaller the volume, the smaller the mode of transport that is required. That is our introduction. That is how we get into international trade as we go to page, it is page term 3 notes, grade 11. Okay, principles governing trade and transport. Can someone read for us the first paragraph? Can you read for us the first paragraph? Yes.
Countries have resources to support their economy and to feed their people, but often they either do not have enough resources or there is an absence of certain resources. To make up for any shortfall in resources, commodities have to be imported.
Yeah.
Those commodities have to be brought to the country that needs them. Countries that have a surplus of certain commodities will send those commodities to a country that needs them. For example, the country sends the commodities, exports them to the country that needs them.
Now, we take it to a bigger level. It's not your individual needs now. It's the needs of the country. It's what the country wants, what the country needs. Obviously, it needs what it doesn't have. And we cannot have everything. There are things we have here which other countries don't have. Do we agree? Yes. What do we have that other countries don't have? Yes? We have coal. Okay, what else? What else? We have fruits. Okay, we have gold. Yes? Sugar cane. Okay, so those are some of the things that we as a country have, but you might find that in other parts of the world, it's not there. In turn, there are certain things that other countries have that we don't have here, like what? What do other countries have that we don't? Yes. Grain, wheat. Yes and no. We don't have as much in terms of volume, but we do have. We have huge farms in South Africa and Southern Africa. Okay. What else? Yes? Cell phones. Do we have a cell phone company in South Africa? No. Oh, well, not yet. Okay. But we don't have. Okay. What else? Yes? We don't have cars. Yeah? You also wanted to say cars, so you like cars. Okay, what else do we have, other countries have that we don't? Is there anything that comes into mind? Fabrics. We're all wearing clothes here. Yes, we can sew it here in South Africa and put it together, but the fabric is imported. Okay, we don't have that kind of plants that make cotton. Okay, there are many things that many countries have that we don't. And likewise, we have many things that other countries, well, not so many, but we do have some things that other countries don't have. And in exchange, we will trade with each other. We will send them what we have and they don't, and they will bring us what they have and we don't. And in doing that, it's now trade at an international level. Hence, we call it international trade. So now we're dealing with trade amongst countries. So if you have a factory here that produces t-shirts, that factory will produce for its locals. And when they have an abundance, they will then ship it out to another country that might need the t-shirts and they don't. Vice versa. So it's a matter of surplus. If you have more than what you need, sell the rest. Okay. The principle behind trade is not to sell for other countries. No. You are producing for your own people or your own economy, and when you have an extra, you sell it out. That's the principle. All right. So it's that in terms of commodities. Can you move on? Yeah.
of that commodity to a country that needs the commodity. A country where there is a demand for that commodity is the basis of trade between countries.
Now, which brings us, or which introduces another concept of demand and supply. Where goods are moved, they are moved from an area of supply to an area of demand. Okay? Demand being a want that is backed by purchasing power, where you want something and you have the means, the money, or otherwise of getting it, you then demand that particular thing. So whenever there's an area of demand, it means goods must flow towards that direction. Now, we have to check who has those goods of which will supply us. Okay, so trade is a matter of demand and supply. This region demands what that has, so that region will be a supplier of this other one. Okay, it's demand and supply. All right, you can move on.
Economy of scale is an important consideration in discussing transport type. The amount of cargo to be transported, the distance over which the cargo will be transported, and the urgency of the consignment affects the tariff that will be charged.
Exactly. Okay, economies of scale, the distance, how quick do we want it? How far is it? How soon do we want it? Okay, also plays a factor here. If I have to get them tomorrow or in the next 2 days, if you have to get something from, like you know in South Africa, we ship avocados to England because they don't grow them there. They are precious, somehow they like the avocado plant, the avocado fruits in England. But now, can you keep that on the ship for 2 weeks? No. Why not? You can temperature control it. Why can't you keep it there? It's going to rot, huh? It's a matter of urgency. Flowers in Dubai. You know, Dubai imports flowers. Okay? How long do you think you need to get flowers to Dubai from Southern Africa or Australia? It's a matter of days, isn't it? So in that case, would you say it's a ship or an aeroplane? An aeroplane. Get them there the next day or in 2 days' time. Okay? But can the aeroplane carry large volume like a full container load? No. Because of the weight and the volume it counts. So economies of scale tend to focus on checking what's the best way of moving this particular item. Okay? And you have options. You listed your options in our Johannesburg example, isn't it? So you look at your options that you have, you look at the urgency of that particular item, and then you then decide on the best alternative. So in terms of international trade, what options do we have? Now trade between countries, where now we have to intercontinental trade, now moving from one continent to another. Which options do we have? We have ships. What else? Trains. Aeroplanes. Can be trains, but not intercontinental. No, can't be trains. It can be international in terms of across the border, like South Africa and Botswana, or South Africa and Namibia, South Africa and Zimbabwe. That, yes. But now if we have to go to another continent, there's water in between. Okay, so then you have the ship and the aeroplane. Those are your two options. Obviously, depending on the size of your consignment as well. So a large volume of cargo over a long distance will cost less per ton per kilometer. Okay, now simply put, if you are moving a very large volume, 120 metric tons of coal, is it cheaper to put them in one? What's the biggest bulk carrier? It is a Cape size, isn't it? So is it suitable for you to use one Cape size or 3 handy sizes? One capsize. Is it not like the same example we did with the Johannesburg and the taxis and the bus and the car? It is, okay? It would be much cheaper for you to use a much bigger mode of transport as opposed to using 3 smaller modes, okay? So that is all that has to do with economies of scale, ton miles. All right. Okay, you can proceed.
A small volume of cars over a short distance will cost more per ton per kilometer.
Yeah.
Because most trade involve moving heavy and bulk commodities across oceans or seas. Shipping is the most important transport type in the international trade. About 92% of all trade is conducted by sea.
Now, within our 2 options, we then are aware that the aeroplane can only take so much weight. So hence, majority of the cargo transported internationally will be transported on ships. There you find your large volumes of goods. Okay, your 18,000 TEU ship, your bulk carriers, your VLCCs, your ULCC, much of the volume is transported on the, through the oceans by ships. Hence, shipping is so instrumental and so important in international trade. Yes, there's a question.
So, the main reason why ships were invented was just
To transport goods across continents. Yes, ships, yeah. Boats, it could have been for recreational purposes as well, but with ships, it is for cargo, especially merchant ships. Okay, yes. Here's a discovery here. Is it not possible to build a railway over the water? You tell me. What's your take on that? Railway over the water, yes. So if they can build oil rigs, you're saying they can also build trains. Who is they? It's we. Okay. Okay. So yeah, what's your take? Rail tracks on top of the water.
There's going to be a problem if there's going to be heavy rain.
Sorry?
There's going to be a big problem if there would be like heavy rains because it's also going to hit the ocean. So
Heavy rain, storms, cyclones. Okay? So all of a sudden we have to constantly maintain, and also it's not worth it in terms of the distance. How much can we move on those trains? How many containers do you think in one go can we move? In one go. Hundreds, 200 maximum. That's not even half of the smallest of container ships. It's not even half. Because if you look at the smallest container ship, it carries anything between 1,500 to 2,000 TEUs. Okay, that's the smallest range of container ships. Okay, and your largest will carry how much now? 24,000 TEUs. So you can imagine, yeah, how many trips would we have to do on those trains? Okay, it will be costly and it will delay. Okay, because trains, they are subject to delays. Okay, because remember now, there must be constant maintenance on the rail tracks to see if the train can go, can proceed. Other areas have got icy conditions. So there will be challenges there. Now, someone said that without trade, half of the world would freeze and another half would starve. Do you think that's true? Yes. Why? Why is it that half of the world would freeze and another half would starve? Why are we starving? Why are we freezing? What's making us to starve and what's making us to freeze? Okay, there's the issue of food security. So many countries cannot produce their own basic foods. How is that? Not being able to produce your own basic foods. And that's the reality. The many things we eat and consume are not produced by us. It's just an example. I'm not making South Africa as an example in this case. Generally so, many countries cannot even produce their own foods. They rely on other countries. You might find that we can make cereal, but we import the wheat. Okay? So in that way, there is food security. Big farms globally supply many nations, like now, grains from Ukraine are threatening food security. Because Ukraine, we know, is your large exporter of grains. So is Russia, but Ukraine dominates there. Now, with Ukraine not being able to ship out the grains, it is threatening food security for the rest of the world, which then means food prices will go up because the few other suppliers of grain will be under pressure. There will be lots of demand for grain and they will start to increase their prices. The price will go up, which will then make our food items more expensive. So that is the starving part. What about the freezing part? Why would we freeze? What makes us freeze? Or who would freeze? Who would freeze and why? Yes?
So when you say freeze, you mean the
Frozen. Frozen. Ice. Yes. That's the freeze I'm referring to. Why would we freeze? Who would freeze? Yes.
like when freeze is maybe the exporter of heaters and all that stuff. I don't know.
Heaters. Okay. Yes, there's a heat element into it. But why would you, who would freeze first and foremost? You can raise your hand. Or a particular area. The ocean, where? Which part of the world do you think? Antarctic, Arctic, Antarctica. Your northern hemispheres and your southern hemisphere, like in your Arctic oceans all the way there, but you don't have much life there. Okay, that's your weather stations and so forth. But your northern hemisphere now, okay, that is a polar region. On top of the northern hemisphere, it's a polar region. It's icy conditions. They require heat, massive heat to keep them warm. Okay, not that they hate the ice. They've always had ice. Okay, but you need a certain degree of heat. So they import lots of coal to generate electricity to keep them warm. And they import lots of crude oil, crude and gas for their power stations to keep them warm. So without this trade now, they won't be able to do that until they don't have coal. Some of the countries don't have crude oil and gas. So they rely on the supply from other countries. So in that way, they would freeze. Do we understand? Do we have questions at this point? Yes.
So what if I, as South Africa, I decide to quit trade, like I aid things, other people, I have everything I need. So then what happens to trade?
Good one. If now we decide, we are done, we are independent. Okay, do you think that's a good or a bad thing if we are to be independent? Who says it's good? Who says it's bad? Let me hear your views on this one. Kapela, you must argue your case. Argue why. You say it's bad and why you say it's good. Are you saying it's bad or it's good?
I'm saying it's bad.
It's bad. Why?
Because we also need own resources. Like you said, the other things that we have, other countries don't have.
Okay.
It's like, let's say maybe we didn't have coal. We would need that coal for oxygen and heat and for electricity as so I think it is bad.
Okay. But I don't want to undermine her point because now she's saying in a point where we have everything. We have all we want and need. Of which is impossible, but yeah, nothing is impossible, yes, I know. But there is no country that has everything. But what happens if we have everything and we decide to cut ties? Yes. Okay, it's good to be self-sustaining or self-sustainable as a country. However, we are part of a global community, okay, where there is a constant exchange of even knowledge and ways of doing things. Okay, so hence it's good to compete. Competition is good. Okay, because if you don't compete with anyone, you will not advance. You will stay there, forever there. You compete with yourself, and you are happy with that. If we are to rise and make it into this global context, we have to compete with internationally, according to international standards. That's where we need to be. But what is important with trade is that it brings in foreign revenue into the country. And foreign revenue is essential in strengthening our economy, more especially our currency. So one way or the other, we have to be international. You can't just be local and domestic if you want economic growth and advancement as a country. Okay, otherwise the value of our economy would shrink eventually. Okay, we need to sell and buy from other countries. So at this moment, it's impossible. Even in the future, we can't be independent and isolated. Yes? Oh yes, yes, definitely. Everything, especially in trade, is regulated. First things first, there are trade agreements. Okay, there are laws and agreements to trade between countries. We cannot just go and buy from China, buy from America, or sell to Australia. There has to be a trade agreement in place. Okay, that agreement will then guide us in as far as what is it that we are trading between each other and how much are we trading. More especially if we are also producing the same. Because it can happen that we are able to produce a particular item at the same time we are buying it from other countries. Okay, sometimes it's not always that we buy what we don't have. Sometimes we will buy what we have. Sometimes it happens. Why would you do that? It's tied in trade agreements. If countries are agreeing to trade, they agree on many terms, and it's a negotiation. It's a give and take situation. And governments must then balance it out to say, okay, as much as your package of trade agreement or of trade offerings has also have chicken that we do have, well, we'll sacrifice our chicken because we are looking on a bigger scale. Okay, sometimes that happens, but yes, there are laws that govern how, or that regulates how we trade amongst each other. Okay, are you happy with that? Okay, what else? Okay, can we move on, or do you have other questions? We can move on. All right. Now, some items may be used by aircraft. Okay, I think we've been there. Small light items, we've done this section now. We can move on. Okay, now, The level of trade rises and falls depending on a number of factors. Now, supply and demand is governed or is facilitated by a number of factors. There are a number of factors that make us demand or want certain things. All of a sudden, there is a new discovery and everyone wants that item, so there's more demand. There's a new product in the markets, okay? There's a drought. What happens in a drought season or when there's a drought? What season is that if we have a drought? Summer. No, not season, but what is the area like when there's a drought? It's dry, ne? Can crops grow? No. They cannot. Now, what happens to you when you have a commercial farm and you've planted mealies? Because you want to make, you have a contract with Impala or Inyala, or White Star to produce mealie meal, to supply your maize so that they can make the mealie meal. Now there's a drought and your farm is sustaining that drought. What happens then? What happens? Can your mealies grow? No. So now there will be a shortage. So those things happen. Now all of a sudden, you have invested your money. Let's give a typical country, let's just give Madagascar, a country that is never thought of. Okay? Let's just think of Madagascar. You've invested because Madagascar will be developed and there is this positive outlook on Madagascar and it's promising. And then you take your millions and your billions together with your team and other investors and you go and invest in Madagascar. You invest in mining, you invest in manufacturing, you invest in many other things in Madagascar, and all of a sudden there's a politician in Madagascar that just says, we want to nationalize everything. What does it mean to nationalize? Now that on another political stage might sound favorable for other people, but on the economic part of things, it will not, because we have investors. You are an investor. You went to Madagascar to invest. You put your money there because you wanted returns. And in also doing so, you are providing jobs and you are, in a way, improving their economy. But more or less, you invested because you want money. Now, when someone wants to just take your business like that, would you just agree on it and say, well, all is good, all is well? Okay, so sometimes politicians say things that affect the flow of goods. Okay, so those are the factors. Okay, if we look at our notes, we've got 5 factors: global and regional economic changes, climate factors, product-specific fluctuations, political instability or threats of it. Okay, it's those 4. Okay, with global and regional economic changes, that has to do with the development. Okay, when you develop, when regions of the world develop, like industrialization, when we now starting to have more industries. Okay, which region of the world is industrialized, if I may put it that way? Which region do you think is industrialized? The northern parts, Europe, okay? But it's the western side of Europe. What else? North America, and what is the main country there? There is the USA. What else? Australia. Yes, but not at an international. It doesn't compete like with Europe and your Americas. Another region is the Far East. where you find your China and your Indias, it's developing fast. Okay, so global and regional economic changes. If the world or a region is experiencing an economic boom, its trade, export trade will flourish. Money will be available to buy imported goods, and the level of trade, which are imports and exports, will rise. Okay? Booms and recessions. When there's an economic boom, it means there's an abundance. All of a sudden, we experience huge rain, favorable rainfall, and our farms are flourishing. Okay? We are able to harvest more than what we thought we would. That is a boom. All of a sudden, we are producing at a very high pace, and we have an abundance. Okay? That is an economic boom. Sometimes economic booms do happen, and then goods flow at a very large volume. Okay? A container ship, for example, will be able to leave the country with goods exports cargo, with good export cargoes. Because the prosperity within that country will lead to a large demand of imported goods, that container ship will return with goods import cargoes. All right, so which then gives us our main demand.